Welcome, everyone. We're really excited to have you here today on this class for a very important topic. Today, we're going to be exploring how and when to talk to kids about sex. And I just really want to acknowledge everyone that's on this call today. There's over 500 of you who've registered, and that really lets me know that this is an important topic that's mostly taboo in our culture, and I acknowledge you for taking leadership and consciousness around this as parents. So we're really excited to cover a lot of ground today. And first, I want to just introduce myself and my partner so you can see who you're going to be talking with. My name, for those of you who don't know me, is Annie Lala, and I'm a professional relationship coach specializing in true love relationships. Mostly I help skeptic singles find their soulmate, and I also specialize in helping couples who love each other but have conflict, and I help them alchemize their conflict into intimacy with a series of strategies I call the art of fighting. So that's what I'm up to, and I'm here with my amazing sister who's also a coach and a leader and a workshop leader, and her name's Ria, and I'll let her introduce herself now.
Thanks, Annie. So I'm Ria Lala, and I'm a parent coach, and I also offer courses that help build parents' deep, trusting, and connected relationships with their kids and cultivate skills that allow them to thrive. So folks, tonight I'm really excited. This class is all about sex and our kids, and it's a really juicy topic. Now, this webinar is for parents and caregivers who basically want some more perspectives on how to talk to kids about sex. It's also for parents who feel that their kids may be too young for this conversation, or parents who barely want to think about this because it just makes them feel so tense and anxious. It's also for those parents who worry that talk about sex is going to grow our kids up far too quickly. So for the next 50 minutes, we're going to share our best ideas, and then after that, we're going to take all of your burning questions, and nothing you ask is going to be off limits, so bring them. However, before the Q&A, which I can't wait to get to, I'm going to be giving you access to a really great opportunity to learn and master these ideas at an even deeper level. And for being on the call, I'm going to be throwing in a serious bonus, and I think so is Annie tonight. So definitely want to stay right to the end of the call to hear what that is. Okay, so let's get started because we've got a lot to cover. So to begin with, what is the best age to have the sex talk, and how much do we tell our children when they ask? Well, to start off, let's just talk about sexuality. Sexuality is a part of every person's life, no matter what the age. Now, as your child grows and develops, they may giggle with friends about private parts, or maybe they share dirty jokes, or they'll scan through dictionaries, looking up taboo words. Now, this curiosity, it happens far earlier than we think. But this curiosity is natural, and children of all ages have questions. So there really is no best age, but when they're ready to ask, we should be ready to answer. Now, the hardest part, of course, is staying composed and, just preparing ourselves for what we're going to be talking about. We want to try and respond to our child's initial question without turning red or acting as though some momentous exchange is taking place. That might suggest to them that sex is linked to feelings of shame. So we're going to talk all about, the how to do that and what to say so that you can regulate yourself. But let's just talk about the ages for a moment. So when we have young kids, ages 2 to 3, let's say, at this age, kids are beginning to explore their bodies physically. Now, as the parents, ideally we call the body parts what it is at an early stage, and we offer that as part of our child's development language. So words like penis and scrotum for boys, or clitoris and vulva for girls. There's no reason that we shouldn't use this word. However, just to share a story with you, I personally use nicknames initially with my kids. And I realized luckily I caught that it was to do with my own uncomfortability, which I had to explore as I grew and do my own work and eventually triumph over. However, using proper anatomical names saves us from having to have a conversation about why it's called something else, why we chose to use a different word and not the real word in the first place. And then you're kind of face to face with whatever story that you created about that. So using the actual names is perfect. What's key is that from 2 to 3 that we ensure that there's no judgment whatsoever towards their kids, towards their kids in any negative way to do with the questions they ask. They're curious, and they're curious about everything. So as such, they're going to be curious about their bodies. We don't want shame to set in, but we're going to talk more about shame and sex in a moment. So that's ages 2 to 3. The next kind of age group is ages 3 to 4. And that's where kids may ask, where do babies come from? But, at this age, the kids won't understand all the details of reproduction. So a simple, mom has a uterus inside her tummy, which is a sac that holds the baby when it starts to grow. And that's where you lived until you were old enough to be born. It's fine. Those are generally the questions that come up between 3 and 4. Now, developmentally, between the ages of 4 to 6, kids may start to ask about how a baby is born. Now, my suggestion is to stick with the literal response. When you were ready to be born, I helped the uterus push you out through mommy's vagina. If kids ask how the baby got inside of you, you can try something along the lines of, well, a tiny cell inside dad, which is called a sperm, joined together with a tiny egg inside mom. So again, what we want to do here is we want to keep it just like as an everyday conversation. Sometimes it helps to role play these things out so that we become comfortable using these words. This is a really great opportunity for us to even explore how comfortable we feel using the words like vagina and penis, or if we use nicknames to deal with our own insecurities around that terminology. So next, ages 6 to 8. So at this point, this is the age group that my kids are in. And here your child is learning much more about how people get along with each other. They may become interested in what takes place sexually between adults. Their questions become much more complex, and they try to understand the connection between sexuality and making babies. And they're going to come up with their own explanations about how the body works or where babies come from. So we might as well at this point start giving them some really good answers. It was about a year ago that my son, he was just turned 7, and he asked me, Mom, what is sex? And at that point in time, I had thought about the conversation, but I hadn't really prepared my mind for the fact that he had said it, just blurted it out. And then shortly after, he said, as I looked at him, taking a moment to regulate myself, he said, Logan, who was the boy down the street, wants to have sex with Ava. So at this point in time, I felt like I was about to choke because I just wasn't prepared. But I did realize that there's a lot of issues and shame that can be created around sex. So I said to him, that's a great question. Hang on a minute, let me just put my plate down. And in that moment that I put my plate down, it gave me a chance to recoup and think about how I answer that question. And we're going to get to that in a bit. So it's really important that we help our children understand sexuality in a healthy way. Lessons and values that they learn at this age will stay with them as an adult. And it's also going to encourage meaningful adult relationships later. Parents at this point can talk about the realities of puberty and what body changes are going to be occurring in their children. So I told my kids that when you get older, maybe when you're around 13 or 14, you might start to see hair grow under your armpits or in your private areas. I told my son that his voice may change and get deeper. I told my daughter that she would get boobs just like mommy. I asked them what they thought about this. And at this point, that led to some really wonderful, intimate questions where you can both share your experiences and your feelings. Maybe even share one personal recollection that really stands out in your mind from when you were growing up. As for the direct question, what is sex? I told him that basically a penis and a vagina fit together like pieces of a puzzle. And together with the sperm, which looks just like a little tadpole, and then I showed him a little video on YouTube, that little tadpole swims up through the penis, finds the egg in mommy's belly, and that process is called sex. And it's one of the ways that adults use to have a baby, and it's always part of a deeply loving relationship. So that's what I told my kids at ages 6 to 8. And they sat there, and I stayed very calm and collected as I told them. And it was just like, and we moved on. Ages 8 to 9. At this point in time, at this age, we know that our kids aren't living in a bubble. They're exposed to kids that are down the street, in the schoolyard, at school. And even though I don't have TV or any magazines, they would find out, potentially have questions about sex just by watching a David Attenborough documentary. And they're going to start to realize that sex is important, which your child has probably picked up from media and their peers. So a child at this age can handle a basic explanation on just about any topic, including a topic like rape. I mean, remember, when we talked about sex as being part of a loving relationship, rape, you can explain to your children, rape is when someone forces another person to have sex, and that's something that we never want to do. And again, if we prepare our minds and prepare our bodies for this conversation, the conversation is going to go much more smoother, and the children are just going to take the information and they're going to feel, okay, just something that they need to know. Ages 9 to 11. Okay, so your child probably has already developed a sense of right and wrong. They're able to understand that sex is something that happens between two people who love each other. Then they may begin to become interested in how mom and dad fell in love. So questions about romance and love and marriage might arise. Maybe questions about homosexual relationships. Use this time to discuss your family's thoughts. Use this time to talk about homosexuality. Explain that liking or loving someone doesn't depend on a person's gender. And, it's no different than a man and a woman loving each other. This, of course, is your choice, but this is something that I have no issue discussing with my children at 6 to 8. But at 9 to 11, that might be the perfect time. You have to use your own parental wisdom and intuition as you speak to your kids and understand where they are maturity-wise and what they can handle. So ages 12 to 14, by now kids are formulating their own values. So check in every so often to just make sure that you can provide context for all this onslaught of information that your child is picking up on. Kids should be crystal clear about their body and how it functions, from wet dreams to masturbation, just so they can develop a healthy acceptance of it. Now, your child's questions about sex don't always come up at convenient times, and you may not always be prepared for it. I wasn't. But you can give up on the idea of presenting the subject in a big birds and the bees talk that happens at some monumental time in their life. It's really just a series of small conversations spread out over many years. You, as a parent, become the obvious go-to person whenever there's a question. And you also don't want to give the kids too much information to overwhelm them. So if you just talk about sexual matters from the beginning of a child's use of language, there never needs to be a heavy conversation. Keep them simple, keep them to the point. So, for example, if a 6-year-old wonders what birth control means, it's not necessarily that they're asking you all the specifics about intercourse. Just give them the information that they ask for. And here's a tip that I live by. Never avoid a teachable moment. Dive in and offer accurate information whenever your child goes anywhere near the topic of sex. Okay? So that's basically for the ages. And the next part that I want to talk to you, we want to talk about when, but I want to tell you a little bit about the how. Now, to do this well as parents, thinking about how we talk to our kids, we need to attune. And attunement means to think about what we are doing. How are we showing up non-verbally and verbally? What energy are we putting into the space? Are we in the same vibrational frequency as our kids are? It's essentially a dance that you're doing. You know it. You felt it when your child was just a baby. Your baby goes coo, and you go coo, and it's just like this wonderful dance you do. And that dance is maintained as they grow and develop. And as far as you can keep that dance connected and alive is how much your child will want to come to you with their questions and their confusion and their hurts and their sorrows. So this requires us to dig deep and explore our own blind spots. So I really recommend role-playing this. Like when you get off this call, sit in front of the mirror, no matter how old your children are, and role-play what you would say. Think about how your eyes are looking at them. Are they distracted? Are you nervous? Are you busy turning a pot or tidying up the kitchen? How's your body looking? Is it facing them? Do you feel connected? What does your tone sound like? Are you touching them? Are you smiling? Is your feature soft? Think about everything that shows up non-verbally, and then think about what you want to say and practice it out in a role play. What I want you to remember is our fundamental beliefs are formed during childhood. Your child's mind interprets even the smallest situations and remarks, the facial expressions, the energy, and tattoos them into permanent subconscious beliefs that they are going to hold on to for the rest of their life. So it's worth it to raise our curiosity and have a heightened awareness about all the ways that we show up for kids, because they will always pick up on our cues first. Now, for for those parents who want to know and are eagerly interested in what happens to kids whose parents just either avoid or skim over talking about sex, I'm going to let Annie jump in and give her thoughts on this.
Right.
Annie, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ria. That was exquisite. I think you really nailed it in terms of the nonverbal cues and attunement. This is really important stuff. I'm going to dive in here. So what happens to kids whose parents avoid or skim over talking about sex with them? And that seems to be like a lot of parents. Well, what happens is kids get a sense that this is not to be talked about. This whole area of their life is to be avoided. In the avoidance of it, they can smell shame around the subject. And you see, the thing about shame is it requires secrecy to survive. Okay, the way shame lives is in the dark. And so the more you keep a subject in the dark, the more shame starts to accumulate there. Parents, while avoiding awkward moments or uncomfortable conversations in the short term, they may lose in the long term if their kids end up in sexual situations that they then have to deal with or bail them out of, like everything from pregnancy to STD to rape to inappropriate premature sexual activity. And so it's really worth the work up front to, as Ria said, learn regulation techniques, learn to work through your shameful relationship with sexuality as a conversation, as a topic, and move through that in service of being a safe, neutral place for your children to get that information. If kids feel sex is a safe topic to talk about with parents who lead it, by the way, and parents who lead that conversation, it's, again, Ria mentioned that when the kid leads it, you respond, but don't be afraid to bring it up yourself if you feel it's appropriate or relevant to what's going on in the child's life. And kids feel safe about sex in general when parents feel safe, instead of feeling scared, shamed, or disgusted. Okay, so we really are demonstrating with our subtle body language, our tone, our words, the way we hold the subject matter to begin with. We're training our children to relate to their own sexuality in the same way. And just some research here. Studies have shown that parents are the biggest influence on how kids make decisions about sex. Children who report having good conversations with parents about sex are actually more likely to delay sexual activity. They have fewer partners and use condoms and other contraceptives if they do have sex. They come at it with more intentionality, education, and confidence. So if we can, as parents, create a series of mini conversations, research shows us that teens are more sexually active than parents think. Thousands of teens get pregnant every day, suffer STDs, get into all kinds of difficulties. And we've all been in situations where our kids have mentioned something grown up, and we think, where the hell did that come from? How did they learn it? So the information's out there, and we really want home base and the parent system to be a place that's safe for them to bring their curiosity and their questions. I think we can help our kids deal with topics related to sexuality, starting when they are very young and throughout their lives. One of the metaphors that comes to me around this is the idea of vaccination or inoculation. You know, if you think about what a vaccination is, it's a little piece of the actual pathogen or virus that's inert and hopefully non-infective, and you inject that into the baby as a vaccine. And what that does is it produces an immunoresponse, a reaction in the body. The immune system learns how to cope with that new information in the form of the virus. And so when the actual virus in the real world enters the body, the system's already geared and set up and ready to deal with it and cope with it because it's been inoculated. And so as parents, being able to have the conversations with our kids about sex, we're inoculating them against the disease of misunderstanding and poor education about it later down the line, from friends or online chat rooms or pornography or just all the other places that are less reliable sources of information. Okay, now sexuality includes a wide range of topics, including male and female bodies and how they work, human development, reproduction, types of relationships, heterosexual, homosexual, what makes a relationship healthy or unhealthy, what makes good sexual behavior, poor sexual behavior, and how to prevent pregnancy and STDs. The relationships that we build and the conversations we have and expectations and boundaries we create is really what ensures our children are able to make good, great decisions about what they do in their sex life. The next thing I want to say is it's so important to talk to your kids about sex before everyone else does. So, although parents may want their kids to remain innocent, the reality is that no parent can really shield their child from the sexual content that permeates so many aspects of popular culture. By creating a foundation of communication early on, by talking with our kids about sex, us as parents, we can help our children navigate the sexual content around them, give it a context. Talking about sex not only helps kids understand the information that's coming at them, it gives them a clearer sense of what's their family values around sex and allows them to live their sexual life from that place. I think more than ever, as responsible adults, we need to stay one step ahead of the game by arming our children with accurate information about sexual health before they get their questions answered on the playground by older friends, or worse, through, unreliable resources or through experimentation without understanding. We need to teach them to think critically about what they hear, and I think this open communication helps parents to establish themselves very early as their child's number one source of sexual health information, and then throughout their development. Kids want to hear this information from their parents. They really do. This, I think, is what builds trust the most. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Ria for the next question. She's going to talk about, I'm doing the next question. Question number 4, right. Okay, so next thing we're going to talk about is learning how our shame as adults around sexuality, the shame that we have in ourselves, how it actually impacts our kids. This is a really important and subtle aspect of this whole conversation. There's a great quote by an artist, I think it's Picasso, but I can't remember, and he says, leading by example is not one way to inspire another person. It's the only way. And one of the things we all know as parents is kids copy. I call them not just Homo sapiens, but Homo imitans. They imitate us. They don't follow what we say, they follow what we do. They follow how we be. And our kids can actually smell into and tune into how we feel about the subject that we're talking about, and in particular around sex. They know by the tone, the facial gestures, our energy, whether we're making eye contact or not, how much eye contact, the fidgeting in our body, the relaxedness of our position. I really think the more neutral and congruent and relaxed that you are when you're talking about sex with your children, the safer your kids feel about their own sexuality, right? So if you're talking about sex and you're nervous and twitching and fidgety and uncomfortable and your eyes are darting everywhere, this sends a message to your kids that it's not a safe space. It's not a place you can be comfortable with. And so you pass on that insecurity and that shame to your kids without even realizing it. I want to remind you that when a kid is born, when your child is born into your reality, the mother and the father is their reality. It's the father is God and the mother is goddess. And whatever you guys do as parents is right. And they're programmed to copy what has worked so far, and you guys represent that. So whatever you do, they can't discern what's optimal, suboptimal, what's insecure, what's secure. They just copy as it is. And I really want to invite you and inspire you to take on being conscious about not passing on our crazies, our insecurities, our shames, and our awkwardness around sex to our kids. Because you know deep in your heart how it's held you back privately, kept you back from feeling alive in your own sexual life, and the last thing you want to do is saddle your children with those same shackles. And I just want to announce this. As a relationship coach, I work with couples, I work with love, I work with their sex life. And straight up, sex is not itself shameful at all. In my opinion, it's the most magnificent vehicle for life to propagate itself into the future. It is how a human being is made and born. It's the sacred movement pushing evolution and nature forward, and it's how you came to be. Every human you've ever met, it's a miracle, and they came into being through sex. And I really want to reinforce the sacredness of that. And if you hold that as part of the narrative when you talk to your kids about sex, energetically, you hold the sacredness of it, they too will learn that there's something magical, sacred, and important about this topic. If this is something you struggle with and you don't know how to do it, I really encourage you, for your kids' sake, to work with a coach, a partner, a therapist, and explore your own hang-ups, your judgments and shames around sex. Not only will it improve your own sex life for sure and turbo boost your romantic relationship, it impacts your creativity, your aliveness, and it helps demonstrate a relationship to sexuality that is inspiring to your child instead of scary or shameful or awkward. Now, I'm just going to run through a few quick, hands-on examples of things that happen, as parents who have kids. So what do you do if you happen to catch your kids touching themselves? What do you do? Well, again, we're speaking from our own experience, and the first thing I want to offer to you is to recognize that kids are curious. They touch everything. All over their room, they touch things. They touch you, they touch themselves. There's no difference between them touching their pee-pee, their penis, or touching their nose until you make it a difference by the way you react. Okay? And what I'd love to have is the kids of the future to have an empowered, prideful relationship towards all parts of their body. So when you catch your kid touching themselves, you could say, hey, I see you're touching yourself. Do you know what that is? That's your penis. And the tone of your voice and the energy that you're bringing is, hey, it's okay. There's nothing wrong here. It's totally natural. You don't want to shock them or abrupt them or abruptly nudge their hand away from it or in any way dissuade them from doing what's natural and organic and driven by their animal curiosity. So what if you happen to pass their room, or what if they happen to walk into your room and see you naked, right? How do you respond? Well, you're naked. You see them naked all the time. The minute you act in such a way that it's wrong or bad, or you shut the door, or you shoo them away, what you're installing in them is naked is bad, something shameful, and that's the early beginnings of teaching your child that there's something about their body that shouldn't be shown. Now, I'm not saying you parade around your house naked in front of your kids, but if they happen to see you naked, you just smile, you make it casual and organic, and then you might throw on a robe or you might put some clothes on, but you keep moving at the pace you were, you don't draw a lot of attention to it, and you definitely don't make them feel bad or wrong about happening to view that. Again, paying attention to your tone, your facial gestures, your eye contact. What you really want is a cool, collected, untriggered, and undistressed parent who just happened to be naked in her room getting dressed. Okay, what if your kids try to touch your sexual parts, right? That's an interesting one. They're curious, again. And as Rhea said earlier, this really depends on age. But the one thing that doesn't depend on age that I want to assert and make really clear is I don't think it's ever appropriate to reprimand or shame a child for touching any part of your body. Okay? What it does is it sets up an anchor in their animal system that damages them for the long term. Not to do that. They're bad. They're wrong. So what you do, say they touch your boobies or they touch your pee-pee or your vagina, your penis. Don't pull away violently or abruptly. Don't shove their hand away or make any verbal suggestions that they were bad and wrong. Be very gentle, slow shifts. You might tell them what they're touching. Say that's daddy's pee-pee or this is mommy's vagina. And then you slowly move along and you can, start putting your clothes on and just go about casually. The minute you make a big deal about it, you're pointing at this particular behavior and saying, this is special and different and in a particular way. It's special and different and wrong. And that's the beginning of installing shame. So you really got to watch that. Last thing I want to talk about, every time a sex scene on TV comes up and a couple is kissing, you're out in the park and a couple's kissing each other, how you react as parents towards the sex scene or the kissing scene on TV or the couples kissing in the park is sending a message to your child, is affection okay? Is it not okay? Is your face shriveled in disgust? Do you turn off the TV? Do you tell your kids, oh, don't look at that? Anything abrupt, contractive, shameful, wrong-making is installing in your child a fragmenting of the part of them that someday will want to kiss, that someday will want to be affectionate, and they'll be lodged in their mind, mommy and daddy thinks that's wrong, and I'm not supposed to do it. Basically, if they think being disgusted is the right, basically, if you're disgusted around sexuality, what happens is your kids anchor disgust inside of their nervous system to stay in rapport with you, okay? Whatever you feel, they think is what you're supposed to feel. And the last thing we really want our kids to be feeling about their sexuality is shame or disgust. All right, I think we've covered a lot there. We've got another question here. I'm going to pass it on to Ria.
Thanks, Annie. That was really great information. And, you know, as you were listening to that, maybe it resonated with you. Hopefully it did. But in order to do that, we need to do something else as parents. And we need to be able to put ourselves in almost the emotional space that we can not have that violent reaction, as Annie refers to. So what I want to talk to you about now about is how do we prepare our mind and body for a conversation that often tends to have a high degree of stress and anxiety. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about something called emotional regulation, which is your access to staying calm and cool and collect no matter what situation is thrown your way. Now, as parents, this is gold because there are many things that can throw us off our game. Tantrums that our children are undergoing, or meltdowns, arguments between siblings. Your child may be hungry and irritable and they've pushed all your buttons. Now, I not only use this technique throughout the day, but I've used this technique when I had to answer my son's questions a year ago when he asked me, what is sex? And I told him, that's a great question. And I took a moment and I made sure and I took that moment to emotionally regulate so I can stand in front of him and say what I had to say and converse with him in a way that didn't carry any judgment or didn't carry any shame-making behaviors. So I'm going to give you a high-level overview on how to regulate. Now, often, let me just tell you about something to do with our feelings.
I just want to point out, when Ria's saying regulate, she means regulate your nervous system. Like, learn how to regulate your internal emotional state. Okay, take it away.
Yeah. So we often think that feelings are something that occur in our heads. You know, if that didn't happen, or if she didn't say that, I wouldn't feel this way. I wouldn't think this way. And we get stuck in a mental loop. However, a feeling is just that. It's something we feel. It's in our bodies. It's an automatic response. It's primal. The only way to process a feeling and not have it hijack our emotions, we need to get into our bodies. Now, I'll tell you something. Most of us are not used to going into our bodies. In fact, we do everything to stay out of it. We're not used to being with our rage, our insecurity, our shame, our frustration. And I mean, sit with it. See what lessons it has for you. Just feel the emotion in your body. Now, there are many ways that us humans can cool our systems down and regulate our nervous systems so that we can think clearly and feel calm. But I'm going to share with you one of the best ways to get to our body system to that state. And that is to start with this, 3 deep breaths. So what I do is I do a 3 count through my nose and a 6 count out my mouth. So it's like, and then when I breathe out, it sounds like the ocean. I do that 3 times. I always start with that. At that point in time, I then do something called midlining. So I basically take about 2 inches behind the center of my forehead and 2 inches behind my belly button, and I draw like an invisible line, okay? And that line is essentially like grounding me almost like right to the earth, okay? I almost imagine there's roots coming out from me into the ground. Now, what I'm doing when I midline is simply I'm going to follow that line from behind my forehead down to my navel as slow as I can without my mind wandering. Okay? So as slow as I can, I'm going to go up and down. This again serves the purpose of just calming my nervous system, regulating my heart rate. The next part is really crucial. And this is where we're going to be with the feeling. This is where we go into the sensations in our body. So here's where you get to be a curious detective, okay? So you basically just, and by the way, as you do this, you might think this is going to be a long, if your kids just asked you a question, you're thinking, how the heck, Rhea, am I going to do this? Well, as you get used to it, you're going to be able to do this faster and faster. I can do it sometimes in a very, very short amount of time and then be able to answer my child's question. So I go into my body and I just feel around for different sensations in my body. So I feel through my head, the back of my neck, my shoulders. I've come to know my body really well now. So I tend to feel stress and anxiety in my chest. And now, as a curious detective and staying with the sensation, I'm simply observing my body for what is that sensation. If I had to describe it to you, what would I say? What's the color of it? If it's red, is it red like blood, or is it bright red like a fire engine? What shape is it? Is it moving? What texture is it? Is it bumpy? Is it viscous? Give as much rich detail as I can, but I stay with the feeling. Observe as it's moving. Maybe it's moving from your chest and it's moving up towards your shoulder. Just stick with it. Now, the more you do this, the better attuned you'll be with your body. And instead of just feeling worried and stressed, you'll start to notice the tension in your chest. What's really amazing is I wasn't always good at this, but I got to the point now where I can check in with my body, notice that I'm speaking quite quickly, notice it almost feels like someone's stepping on my chest, and then I realize, oh, something must be worrying me, as opposed to going from my head and then noticing the stress in my body. Just stay with the feeling. You are a curious observer. So, as Annie said, that our children's nervous systems and emotional space, it's tied to mine, just like your child's is tied to yours. And you know this because there have been people that come into your space and instantly you energetically feel joy, but they haven't even opened their mouth. Or you feel, maybe we have memories of mom or dad coming into the room and they didn't even have to say anything, but you just know that mom is pissed and you can feel the stress or the anxiety or the tension that's put on the space without them even saying anything. So how we handle these moments create our children's stress and anxiety and shame and embarrassment. Okay, so as parents, we really hold a great deal of power. And in this instance, when they ask those questions about sex, we are helping code our children's first feelings towards their own sexuality. Okay? So if we just step outside our own fear that our kids are going to have premature sex and our own worry that our kids are making bad decisions, or we're just kind of feeling heartbreak, oh my goodness, my kids are growing up too fast, I don't want them to be exposed to this, then we can step into the mindset of a parent who brings their consciousness to these interactions, because we will celebrate one day when our kids are in a loving, healthy relationship and that you know in your heart that they feel comfortable and free when they're intimate. So as I mentioned, what you want to do is take a mini time out if you want to. And remember that, your kids are always picking up on what you're projecting, even emotionally, without even speaking, into the place, into the room, into the space. So take your time and role play these things out. Okay? So I'm going to let Annie talk a little bit about whether or not it's a big parent concern about whether or not talking about sex can create prematurely sexually active children.
Yeah, thank you, Rhea. I just want to really highlight the procedures and the technology she shared with you about how to regulate your nervous system. And there's many ways to do it. Sometimes other breathing techniques, doing some yoga, moving your body, whatever you know brings you back down to a neutral emotional state, that is a power tool for you to bring you back before you talk to your kids about anything that's awkward, distressful, confusing. All right. So do you think talking about sex with your kids makes them prematurely sexually active? Well, I just want to look at the question. Prematurely sexually active. The point of talking to your kids about sex is to help them mature, is to actually educate and raise their consciousness and mature them so they get to a point that they can make good decisions about when, how, and under what circumstances they engage in a sexual experience, right? And what makes you mature? Wisdom, knowledge, education, a safe, caring, loving opportunity to explore your questions. And that's what I'm inviting all of us to be as parents for our kids. Personally, I think that talking to your kids about sex most likely delays their experimentation in it. I mean, not necessarily, but the mystique and the secrecy and all the shrouded mystery around the sexuality is gone if you're a parent that's continually taking small moments to have little conversations as they develop growing up. It's not this big, scary, weird, awkward, monolithic thing that mommy and daddy never talk about. It's just been part of the family household conversations since they can remember. And it's natural and organic. And if we always talk about sex with our kids in the context of love, caring, and tenderness, that's what we're encouraging them to create in whatever context they choose to start being sexual, in their life. So some of the info I've researched that I just want to share with you, why giving your kids information actually protects them, is a series of studies consistently show that children who are educated about healthy bodies, healthy boundaries, and healthy sexuality are protected from child sexual abuse. Even if children are not asking questions yet, and some never will, we need to give them information about their bodies and help them to develop strong personal boundaries that feel right for them, that make them safe. Sexual offenders prey on children who aren't educated about their bodies and who therefore lack the skills to differentiate between appropriate and inappropriate touching. These children find it hard to say no, especially to an adult or an authority figure, so they may not report abuse for fear of getting in trouble, because they don't know that a boundary has been crossed. This makes them easy targets. The studies I've looked at indicate that 85% of cases of child sexual abuse, the offender is known to the victim. So by teaching our children that they can say no, we arm them against the abuse. And not that they can say no, but it's right for them to say no under certain circumstances. And how will they know? Unless they learn it from their parents first, the people they trust the most. So in addition to learning the concept of ownership of one's body, young children need to learn correct terminology for their body parts so they can accurately and clearly report abuse. Just one story I saw years ago, a parent told a teacher at a daycare facility that over the course of 3 weeks, her 4-year-old boy was telling the mom and the healthcare provider, "Grandpa was playing with my toy." And it wasn't until a quick thinking staff member called the parents and realized that the penis was what they called the toy. And, these kind of tragic stories can be prevented when children are given the right language to communicate effectively. We're running a little bit short of time. I'm going to maybe pass it back to you, Ria.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Okay, so I really want to speak. We have so many parents that are online tonight, and I want to speak to the worry that we have by having these early conversations with our kids, especially if you have kids that are 10 and under, about them going out into the world and sharing this information. So let's assume that you take the moment to use the appropriate words and talk about what sex is at based on their questions and what they're ready for, and that they share it at school and what that means for you, what that means for how the teacher might view you or another parent of a child might view you, okay? So basically, we know that kids are curious and they talk. But if you're concerned about your kids sharing this information or worried what a parent might think or a teacher might think, then you can have a conversation with the teacher. I mean, that's all you really need to do is have a conversation with the teacher to let them know that you've discussed with your child so that your child can feel understood and you guys can both be on the same page. Now, if you worry about whether your kids are telling others before, like other kids, before their parents have had a chance to have their own discussion, just let's first remember that we're not telling them something that's bad or wrong. You told them the facts about their body, the same way as if their ears are used to listen to things and used to hear. You chose to answer their natural curiosity. I personally chose to tell my son age-appropriate answers. If I were to say, don't talk to anyone about it with anyone at school because it's going to make them uncomfortable, the first question that I'm going to get is, why? So then you're going to find yourself down a rabbit hole undoing all of the emotional regulation you did to sound calm and cool before you said it. So I just said to my 6 to 8 year olds that basically some parents talk about this with their kids and some haven't yet. it's a great idea for your friends' parents to be the first one they talk to about this and have it be their own mommy and daddies. Let them be the ones to tell them. And then I asked them, what do you think about that? And I told them, if you want to talk more about it more, please come back. Let's talk about it. I'll tell them anything that they want to know. I like being the ones that they speak to. Now, again, if they keep pressuring and they ask, well, why? Why can't I talk about it? You can tell them, well, it's something that has to do with their own body. And mummies and daddies can be very protective about their children's bodies, just like I am, because that's your personal and private parts. And it's something that's very special, and it should be protected and cherished. It's not something to make fun or snicker about. It's a personal thing. So, I relay that information as if it's no big deal. I don't put it into this really deep, gravity-filled talk that the child can, again, energetically pick up on the fact that I feel uncomfortable, and heaven forbid if he mentions it to anyone. What I want to say as well is that sex is rarely about sex. Sometimes for a child, it's about a hunger to be desired, an escape from boredom or loneliness. It can be about staking territory or claiming possession. It may be an attempt to just lock into an exclusive relationship with somebody. For young boys, it can be about status and recognition, or scoring, or belonging, or fitting in. For girls as well, clinging and holding on to, dominance, submission, a need to please. It may reflect a lack of boundaries or an inability for your child to say no. But it also can express love, heartfelt passion, and intimacy. But almost always, sex is about attachment. And for kids and adolescents, it's an expression of an unfulfilled need. The need to be attached to someone. Now, we say that my kids are attached to me, but how long and how tightly attached they are based on the 1,000,001 moments, those interactions that we have with them every day, how we show up, how present we are with them, how connected we are, how safe they feel. And not safe as if, you're going to beat them, but how safe they feel till they tell you everything, emotionally safe. Children who have replaced their parents with their peers are most likely to be sexually active and sexually preoccupied. So the key is to stay closely tied to them with your feelings, with your words, with your behaviors. Okay? So I see that there's a number of questions that have come in, and I want to get to them all. But before we get into all those great questions that you're sending in, and please, if you have any, please just enter them into the question box. I want to take a moment and share something really special with you. And it was designed for parents out there who want to create this type of relationship where their kids feel like they can tell their parents everything. Now, if you grew up not being able to talk to your parents, or you had reservations or worries, here's a chance to learn some new moves that will have your kids to do just that with you, connect. So the question is, how do you become a parent that your child is so deeply attuned to that they're open to your guidance and are listening keenly as you build and develop trust? As a result of this type of conscious relationship that you're carving with them, essentially you're both in a type of synchronicity, and kids will come to you first to discuss their concerns, their worries, their stress, instead of automatically going to peers who can be fickle and transient and give them wrong information and lead them down a suboptimal path. So you can be the one who influences them. You can be the one that gains confidence. There's a misunderstanding that when kids hit a certain age, usually in their teens, that you kind of lost them to the world, that they go out among their peers. But that is true right now for Western society. In adult-oriented, that's in peer-oriented societies like the West. But there are many adult-oriented societies, many indigenous tribes where this never happens, where peers go off on their own and just leave the family unit, where they're still very closely connected. I want to show you how. What are the type of discussions? How do you show up in every way so that your child looks to you to be that? Because you can overcome it. You can have more power than their peers. So you're also going to learn, I also want to share with you how to help kids manage their impulses and emotions, which is an important part when kids are feeling sexual, to be able to manage these things so that they can weigh options and to learn how to do this when they're making these neural connections, these like nicely grooved highways of neural highways that are being created. You're setting the foundation for that right now. So they can get really good at managing their impulses, and they begin to trust themselves. They can watch themselves make good decisions, which is going to build esteem. Now, if any of this sounds like something that you really want to carve or have in your relationship, or if you're even curious right now, then what I'd love you to do is go to, while we're on the line, go to Build Great Minds. So www.buildgreatminds.com/butterfly. Just open up a new window and type it in. So buildgreatminds.com/butterfly. So I built this for you guys special for this webinar, and it's for conscious parents who want to create something really extraordinary. Now, just to let you know, I'm only taking 15 people. It's a 7-week teleseminar where I'm going to share with you my best stuff. This course in itself is $497, but just for the people that are on this call tonight, for the 15 people who register before November 30th, you're going to get it for $397. And I'm also throwing in a heap of bonuses for you. So first of all, I'm going to be throwing in my complete online ninja parenting course. I'm going to throw in my personality types webinar. You're going to be part of an elite members group to share and connect on all the different struggles and frustrations that you're having with your kids, so we can support each other, we can help each other, and we can give good advice. On the teleseminars, I'm going to have a teaching portion of it, and then we're going to do live coaching on the call. So basically all your frustrations, all your big painful moments, bring them. It's a safe space. You're going to get live coaching every single week. I'm going to throw in an ebook on the 99 questions to build your kids' EQ. And Annie, you have something for them as well.
Yeah, I really so think this is such an important part of developing your parenting skills. I'm putting in a 7-week telecourse I did that was quite successful. It was called Sex Without Shame. And it's, not so much about parenting. It's about love, couples in love, cultivating a sexuality that, mitigates shame. But this is really part of building a household that has kids without sex and shame linked together.
Okay, so I want to take some questions right now, and once again, just for anyone who may have missed it, if you want to check out the website, it's buildgreatminds.com/butterfly, because it's called the butterfly effect. How small shifts in your parenting can create dramatic changes in your children.
Yeah, and anyone who's interested in the stuff we're covering today, which of course to cover in an hour is impossible to get really deep. But if you want to cultivate mastery and take this understanding to a deeper level, this is the course to take on and raise your consciousness in the game of parenting. And I can't recommend it highly enough. I'm actually going to be taking the course with you, so join us and let's share our epiphanies together.
Okay, so I'm going to take some questions, and all right, so one of the first questions I have, so I have someone who has said that in order to demystify the potty, I've let my daughter watch me pee, and she asks, why do you have hair down there? And so how do you respond to that? Well, okay, so what I've said is that it's really natural for grown-ups, I would say it's really natural for grown-ups to have hair in places that children don't, especially under their arms or between their legs, and for men on their faces. So you can add that at some point, maybe when she's 12, she's going to start becoming a big girl, and just like her mom or her aunties or her grandma, that she's going to have hair covering her private parts. Okay, we have a question on, let's see here. Okay, so I have a question on a preschooler who asks why his penis was getting hard at the grocery store. Okay, so I can imagine if people are around, that may have been an uncomfortable moment. So if a question like that happens at an inopportune moment, it's really okay to give, just for that moment, an incomplete answer. As long as there's a promise, as long as you've regulated your emotions and said, hey, that's a great question. Just give me a moment, let me just cash out, and then I'll answer that question for you in the car. In this case, you can say quietly, well, sometimes that happens and it's going to get soft again soon. Or if the question requires a more involved answer, you can say, that's a really good question. Let's talk about it more later. And then get your thoughts together about how you would respond it. As long as your child knows that you're going to follow up with them, that you didn't dodge the question, that you were calm and collected as you spoke, that's what I would recommend. But it's really important that you come back to it later and answer any questions that your child has. Annie, do you want to take a question?
Yeah, I'm seeing a few questions coming up around porn and how to address that. And, what do you tell your kid if they're interested in porn, or if you catch them? Even there's got the shame. If you discover that they're exploring porn. Again, I think the highest priority is to make sure that you don't install shame where there already isn't any. Okay? Implanting shame, though in the short term feels like it'll have them stop, what it actually does is it just makes them do that thing underground and out of sight. So you've lost the trusting connection, and you've lost your influence and impact in that domain, okay, because they've been made to feel bad, wrong, and small because of it. So, again, I have a daughter. She's 18 months old. Porn isn't an issue. Yes, it's come up. But as a parent and as a relationship coach, what I would suggest is if you find out that your child is exploring porn, you just get curious and ask them about it. And you really make sure you do what Rio was talking about earlier and regulate and tune into your own anxiety, awkwardness, and shame and judgment, and make sure you process that down to a kind of neutral space before you even approach the conversation with your child. Okay? Because if you're coming at it with a make, wrong, shame, or blame, they're going to feel it, and that means they're never going to come to you again on that topic. You've lost influence. Mm-hmm. So if you find out that they're looking at porn, you could just say, okay, what about that interests you?
Or you can say that's a website for adults. Just try and stick to sites for kids. I had a situation like that. The kids happened to be watching a few videos on YouTube, and they happened to come across a My Little Pony video. And that particular My Little Pony video, My Little Ponies were doing things that My Little Ponies ordinarily don't do in the cartoon. And so we saw it, and at that moment, I remember I didn't rush over there and said, "Hey, turn away." I didn't know if they even understood what was going on, but I turned it off. If you came into your room and you saw your child watching porn, don't get angry, as Annie said. Just tell them calmly that that's a website for adults. You need to stick to sites for kids. And then you can ask them, as Annie said, ask questions about what is it about. Do you have any questions about, your body? Do you have any questions about what's happening there? Because I'd love for me to be the first person that you come to, and I'd love to answer your questions. At least now you have some power, as she says.
Yeah, again, if they're watching porn, there's something they're getting from it, and that's just what's so. You being curious, open-hearted, and available for them to tell you why they are enjoying it, what they get out of it, first, before letting them know, whether it's age appropriate or not, I think is an important part for them to feel heard and understood and met and in rapport with, because they won't trust your advice of watching a more, age appropriate website if they don't feel like you get them. Okay, so you seek to understand first. Okay, and from that understanding place, trust is built, and then you can guide them into a place that is more supporting and nourishing and developmentally appropriate.
Yeah. I have a question here about masturbation and how to address the topic of masturbation. It's really important as well when we're talking about the developmental ages that we understand that kids that, between the ages of 10, 11, 12 might be discovering masturbation. Masturbation is something that is perfectly natural and for a child to do. And if that is
for anyone to do,
we highly encourage masturbation. But if a child, if they talked about it with you, that they've been touching themselves, again, you want to regulate your emotions first, and you want to just ask questions about it, and you want to share a story. What an intimate, fantastic conversation to have with your child. If you want to create that type of space, if you want to be the parent that creates the space where they tell you everything, then share some personal stories of your own. This is a natural thing that kids might do. They're not going to lose an eye. Fingers aren't going to fall off. They're not going to die. The worry is that if they masturbate, they're going to I guess what the worry is that they're going to want to go have sex next. But the truth is that if we can just provide a healthy understanding of masturbation, what's happening to their body, what the body might be needing, or what the body just feels that it might feel good.
And yet letting them know, like, pleasure is good. If they have an itch and they itch it, you don't freak out. If they're hungry and they eat food, you don't freak out. If they're feeling pleasure from masturbation, we freak out. And just letting them understand that pleasure is natural and normal. And again, if there's ways that they masturbate, that if there's like a compulsive energy to it, or there's something about it that you deem is possibly unhealthy, then you might want to look into that deeper, right? If it becomes a kind of addictive, compulsive habit. But a child touching themselves anywhere and having it feel good is just normal. And I really want to reinforce to parents, like, whatever you grew up with, whatever your parents told you about masturbation, or whatever your culture and system reinforced for you, I'm going to speak on behalf of both of us here. A child has a right to touch their body in a way that feels pleasurable. The minute you put shame onto it, what happens is you install a stigma around pleasure itself. And then that generalizes not just on sexual pleasure, but pleasure at large. And what you're doing is constraining that child's ability to enjoy their life. That's the last thing you want to do as a parent.
And just to tag on to that, one really important transmission that I'd like to make is to do with, and I've seen this in my coaching practice, is the way into the light is always kind of facing and going through the dark. You have to go through the shadow. So trying to skirt around the issue and filling your head with worries, we can see the worry. We can go, okay, I have a worry here. I feel tense. My heart rate's speeding up as I have this discussion. Yeah, I was a bit shocked when I opened the door and I realized that my son was masturbating. It's okay. Recognize it. Don't judge it. Don't shame yourself for even feeling that way. And then also see it for what it's worth. That, if we were to skirt around the issues, any sort of anxiousness or tension around the matter, that actually creates more mystery. That actually creates more curiosity. What is mom and dad freaking out about? What is it about that?
It must be a big deal.
It's like this big gravitational force. But imagine if you're just like, yeah, this is what you do. This is why it's happening. This is, what could happen. Then your child will feel like, oh, okay, well, I have the facts and I know. And it has less power. So, despite the fact that you may feel and fear, all the studies show that the more you talk to your children about this in a calm way, in an open way, in a conversational way, the less that your child will be engaging in sexual activity at an early age. So on that note, that's what I'd love to leave you with. And I highly encourage you guys to create the relation, as you already are as conscious parents showing up for this session today. Create the relationship that allows them to always feel that you're their biggest ally, that you are their safest spot where all their secrets can land, because that's where your power is. Long into the future, they will come to you, and that's when that's magic.
Yeah, and I just want to remind you guys that these ideas get really deep and labyrinthine, and there's a lot of exercises and specific how-to tacticals on how to implement this day-to-day into your life. And so I just want to remind you again about this website to take a look at.
Yep, it's www.buildgreatminds.com with an S, minds.com/butterfly for the butterfly effect. I highly encourage you to take a look at it and just feel into your intuition. Just feel into how the course sounds to you, and if it resonates with you. And if it does and it feels like a good match, then reach out, because I only have 15 spots left, and the door closes for that discounted price on the 30th. So thanks a lot.
I really want you to join us on this course. And in closing, for those people just still hanging on, I want to close with you a story that really made a big difference in my life. It's an anecdote. For mothers out there who are wondering how to deal with their daughter's sexuality. When I was about 14, I discovered a little egg in my mother's cupboard that had a cord attached to it, and when I pressed the button, it would vibrate. I didn't know what it was, but all I knew is when I put it between my legs, it felt good. And so I would do that once in a while. And I would leave it in my bed. And every time I came back to bed, it was gone. Someone had put it away. I realized now as a grown-up, my mom must have found it in my bed, put it back in the box, and I'd go back and find it every once in a while and use it between my legs and put it away. And I realize now that what my mother was doing, which was very brilliant, was she wasn't reinforcing or promoting or encouraging a sexual dynamic with me. She was really neutral about it, but she never once made it wrong, bad, or shameful. And, I'm really grateful for that. And I just wanted to give you a personal anecdote of what it could look like, when you're dealing with the burgeoning sexuality of your children. And each parent out there, you're going to figure it out in your own way. You're going to find your own boundaries. You're going to find what works with you morally and ethically. But I want to encourage you to lean into being a primary support for your child feeling safe and shame-free around their developing sexual persona. So I'd like to leave you with that.
That's great. Well, thanks so much, you guys, for staying with us. It's been a great conversation, and one that gives a lot of pause for thought. I encourage you guys to do some role plays in the mirror tonight, because that could be a lot of fun. It's a great conversation to have with your partner or your friends, and share the information.
And don't forget, check out buildgreatminds.com/butterfly. We look forward to seeing you in the next class.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.